is Making Stitches, and welcome to the first episode of 2024. This time I'm sharing a chat I had at the back end of last year with Cathy Wright from Lazy Kate Textiles. She's a passionate spinner and weaver who loves to share her knowledge to keep the crafts alive.
It's been wonderful, really, because it's so varied and it's so lovely to be able to pass on such an important skill. Spinning is, to me, spinning is so important as a heritage skill for lots of reasons. But yeah, so when somebody falls in love with that, it's just like the best buzz, really.
Hello and welcome to Making Stitches. I'm Lindsay. I've been a crafter since being a child, and my craft of choice is crochet. I design patterns for magazines and my own online shop, and as well as this, I love to hear people's stories, especially other makers, and hear how they came to be doing what they do now. Making Stitches podcast gives me the perfect excuse to speak to other creative people and share their stories with you. So whether this is your first time listening or if you've been here many times before, it's lovely to have your company today. This time I'm sharing a chat I had with Cathy Wright late last year. Cathy runs Lazy Kate Textiles from her narrowboat in Liverpool. I really enjoyed hearing about how Cathy's career developed from attending embroidery classes as a teenager to running classes of her own to share the heritage crafts of spinning and weaving. We'll cover all sorts of things, from rigid heddle looms, now that's not easy to say, to Lazy Kates and Niddy-Noddies. I hope you enjoy hearing about Cathy's creative journey and her infectious enthusiasm for her craft as much as I did. Here's our chat now.
I'm a spinner and a weaver. I'm based in Liverpool. I work with my daughter, and we teach workshops all around the Northwest, really, wherever we can be invited to places. We'll do groups, and we teach in wool shops as well around the Northwest. So it's mainly spinning from beginners all the way through to advanced, and from the sheep, preparation from the fleece all the way through. But then we also do rigid heddle weaving classes as well. So, and from beginners to advanced in that as well.
Now, for the uninitiated, what is a rigid hemmel weaving? Sorry, right, so I couldn't even say that.
I've seen looms with all the shafts and treadles and things like that. This is a very, very simple loom. And so it allows people to be introduced to weaving without it being overwhelming. Because originally the apprenticeship for a weaver was 8 years long. So we'd talk about a rabbit hole, you can absolutely dive down very deep in there. But if you wanted just a little taster of weaving, rigid heddle looms are very, very simple, but you can produce something that's really nice, even if you've never touched a loom before. I just thought I'd be ready with something. So just to give you an idea, on a tiny little loom, a rigid heddle loom, you can produce something like that, even if you've never woven before. And that we get a big buzz out of that because people are thrilled what they can make. And, so as an introduction to weaving, rigid heddle looms are great.
Wonderful. And for the people who were listening who didn't get a chance to see what you held up there, that was a beautiful scarf, wasn't it? That's really lovely.
This scarf is made with sock yarn. Uh-huh. So I would imagine that a lot of people have gone big stash of indie dyed yarns, which is speckles and things like that. Well, rigid heddle looms use those lovely yarns, those sock yarns, and so this is all done with sock yarn. So it's just really very, very simple plain weave scarf, but because of the colours that indie dyers use, they're absolutely brilliant on a rigid heddle loom. Very simple.
That's fabulous. So is this something that you have been doing for all of your life then? Did weaving and spinning come into your life at a very early stage?
My mum was always a brilliant, and is always is a brilliant knitter. and embroiderer and all of those things. But I didn't really go down that route at first. But when I left school, she took me while I was waiting to go on my YTS, which tells some people exactly how old I am. She took me on an embroidery class just in a little local shop, and I fell in love with embroidery. Then I met a textile artist in Liverpool. She was called Anne McTavish. Really, really incredibly talented lady. And she would do embroideries and tapestries on huge canvases. She would project onto the wall the pictures, and then she would embroider that. She would embroider on wire, and they were all amazing 3D productions. They were absolutely fabulous. And she would use very, very heavily textured yarn. And so I decided to make my own. That was when I was in my early 20s. In between then I went and moved and lived in London for a while. So I came back to it when, in about maybe early 2000s. And then I decided to go down that route. So I produced, I learned to spin, and then I learned to dye as well. And the lady who taught me to dye was just in a wool shop. And she said, get a pot, glug of vinegar, put your fibre in, sprinkle some dyes. And that's how I started to dye, just from that. Then I met Susan Crawford, and because she lived locally, and then I started to spin for her. And my mum would design patterns for her. She had very early in the years of the internet, she had an online magazine called Knit on the Net, and we'd design for that. And so it went on from there that I would start. So I started to teach spinning in 2008, and then I went on and I set up on my own in 2016 with just teaching and selling the looms and things like that from 2016.
Wow, so it's been very much a big part of your life all the way through, this sort of thread of creativity from the embroidery through to what you're doing now.
So it's been wonderful, really, because it's so varied, and it's so lovely to be able to pass on such an important skill. Spinning is, to me, spinning is so important as a heritage skill, for lots of reasons. But yeah, so when somebody falls in love with that, it's just like the best buzz, really.
Oh, wonderful. Now, do you need a lot of equipment to do spinning if you wanted to start taking it up as a hobby?
No, you don't. You could pick up a second-hand spinning wheel for probably around about, you might be lucky and get one for £100. You would want a spinning wheel, you'd want a Lazy Kate and a Niddy-Noddy, really. And if you buy from a spinner, they'll sell you all of that together. If you join a guild, if you're lucky enough to have a guild locally, you can join the guild there and you can borrow those things. So you don't need necessarily to have a huge amount of equipment. You can also buy the fibres straight from, say, somewhere like World of Wool. And so I would think for about 100 grams of fibre, maybe you're talking about £2, £3, depending what you pick. Or if you go and support a local farmer and buy a fleece, they probably just give you a fleece. So it depends on why you're spinning and what how sort of rustic, how raw you want that process to be. If you because for a long time I was all about the dyeing, see. So I didn't want to clean any fibre. I just wanted to spin and make the hand spun yarn. Whereas now I'm a bit more about buying a specific breed and preparing that breed and then spinning that to get the best out of that breed. And so I work with local farmers, and we have a local spinning group as well. And we're at the moment in our spinning group, we're doing an alpaca study for a local alpaca breeder to give her feedback on her breed. So it depends on what angle you come in from, really, as to how little you put in there.
Gosh, it sounds like such a broad sort of pursuit to be able to go down, so you can specialise in whatever you want to do. Now, I've got to take you back to a Lazy Kate and a Niddy-Noddy, because
I don't even think I've got one here. Let me just see. I'm in my little corner where I spin. Yeah, I've got one. So what you do is you spin a bobbin full of yarn. So that's a bobbin, and you would spin on there. And so you spin 2 bobbins with your wheel going in the clockwise direction. And then you twist those together or ply them together. And so the wheel, while you're plying, the wheel goes in the other direction. So while you're plying, you put your 2 full bobbins on here. Right. So that's a Lazy Kate.
Okay.
And then when that is on your 3rd bobbin as applied yarn, you then take it off and you want to make a skein. You know, you've seen a skein twisted. Yeah. So you put that on a Niddy-Noddy. And this is a Niddy-Noddy.
Right. So for the people who
that would measure, you could measure roughly, it's only approximately, you can measure a yard or 2 yards on a Niddy-Noddy. Right. So you get an idea of how much yardage you've got.
So that looks like a big H made out of wood with an elongated centre. So you wind it from one end to the other, do you?
So you turn it like that. So can you see this is an awful angle, isn't it? You turn it like that. You've got a pointy end. Yeah. And what you do is you wind it around like that, and you're literally making just a really big loop that you then can twist. Oh, right. And so it keeps everything in order, really. Wow. But yes, when I send these out, and at the post office to say, what is that? And I say, it's a Niddy-Noddy. I think I'm a bit bonkers.
Oh, that's fantastic. And the Lazy Kate was basically a frame that has got the bobbins on.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of people, when they're starting off, they'll get a shoebox and some tent pegs. And that
does the job.
That's the Lazy Kate. And if they haven't got a Niddy-Noddy, put 2 chairs together and wind it around 2 chairs. Yeah. So if you've got a wheel, you don't need a huge amount of money. And if you can borrow a wheel, then even better.
Fabulous. Oh, that's wonderful. I feel so educated this morning already. So tell me a little bit about your own business then, Lazy Kate Textiles, and that it's obviously a family business because you're in it with your daughter too.
Yeah, my daughter is just about to leave. She came on board in around COVID. I had to shield during COVID, but I had a lot of people booked in on workshops. And so Jessamy and her friend Sophia, because Jessamy had worked with textiles, like I taught her to spin from being very little. So she knew what she was doing. And so she took over the workshops while I was having to shield. And then once everything sort of like calmed down a little bit, we carried on working together. But she's going to get married and she's going to go off and do other things. So she will be working with me on the odd occasion, but actually it's going to be me again, which is, it's interesting to see how that'll go. But I've got like new things planned as well. So in terms of Lazy Kate, the spinning and the weaving workshops will carry on. But I also think that I've got access to a room, and so from the first Saturday in the new year, first Saturday of each month, we're going to have what's called the Woolers meeting. And so we called it the Woolers because it's anybody who's got an appreciation for wool. So not just spinners and weavers, crocheters, knitters, whatever. And they can come and use my equipment, and they can warp up their looms in case they don't have a lot of space in their own place. They can warp up their looms, and it's just to have community really, and meet up. So that's a new thing for the new year. But the workshops will still carry on. And so it's all just continuing. So people come from all over the country. It's very funny actually. So they come to Liverpool, and so we had 2 ladies from Portsmouth come up from Liverpool, and they stayed over the water. And so in the morning they got the ferry. They got the ferry across the Mersey to come to the class. And then in the evening, because they stayed it was a 2-day workshop, and they stayed. And then in the evening, they said, we're just going to go back to the hotel and just have a quiet night. When we went in the next day, I said, oh, how was your evening? And they said, we went to the cavern. We went to the cavern. And one lady spent most of the day with her head on the desk. But because it's an exciting city, and it's where we've got our studio is a really interesting, vibrant part of the city. There's an awful lot to see as well. So I think that's what people enjoy coming to see, that as well as we come to like sort of soak in some of the atmosphere, which is really nice.
You're listening to Making Stitches, a podcast celebrating creative crafts and inspiring makers. This podcast is supported by the Making Stitches shop on Etsy, where you can find Making Stitches podcast tote bags, badges and stitch markers, along with a few of my crochet patterns for sale too. Just search for Making Stitches shop on Etsy. Now back to more creative chat. So your new projects for the new year with your community, how important is community to you? Because I imagine in my mind that somebody who spins, it's quite a solitary activity because it's not particularly portable. But how important would you say community is to you?
I think it's huge. And people with spinning wheels will travel. So you can get all different types of spinning wheels. You can get ones that fold up and come in a carry bag. Yeah, like a backpack. So Ashford and Kromsky, they're two brands of spinning wheel. They both have portable spinning wheels, so people bring those spinning wheels along, and their looms as well, which you can get looms that fold up and are really, really portable. So they can travel. And in terms of community, I think it's really important, but I think it's really powerful as well, because it's those communities, those guilds and those groups that are driving being able to support farmers with their wool. So for us as a group, there's going to be the group that we can meet in Liverpool, but there's also a spinning group that meet in Ormskirk in Lancashire, and they meet every other Tuesday. And so that's where we've had Karen from Artemis Alpacas in Liverpool. She's come, and we buy her alpaca fibre. We deal with local farmers, or Ed and Laura from the Wool Circle, who are in Hebden Bridge. And so all of these people, we can all just keep this community, keep this wonderful skill alive, and give the farmers a fair pay for their fibre, really. So as well as being somewhere where people can come and be with other like-minded people, they're doing an important thing as well, really.
Have you seen a resurgence then in the craft in recent years? Is it something that's starting to take off again, or grow in popularity?
I think it's never gone away. When I joined a guild in 2004, which I'm too far away from a guild really, for the guild that we were in, which was up at Blackpool. It was the very, very early days of the internet, and it was quite a small group, maybe about 20 who met regularly. And then once the internet took off, all these people found each other. And I think it was the same for knitting, wasn't it? And there was a huge resurgence in knitting. But I don't know about knitting, but in terms of spinning and weaving, that's never gone away. And so if you go to any fibre festivals, spinning and weaving is huge, particularly weaving in the last few years has been huge. And so I think, yes, there's been a resurgence, but I think that resurgence was a long time ago. But I think it's maintained its level. And those people are still, I think the swell of let's get things done, let's change what's happening here. I think that is gaining momentum more and more. So we see more mills picking up. There's Benridge Woolworks in the northeast, Lucinda Bird, who's doing amazing things. There's the Lake District Tweed, where they've woven the tweed up there, and I think more and more mills are starting to pop up. So the infrastructure, where it wasn't there before, is now starting to get established. And so for a lot of indie dyers who are at wool shows around the country, they're probably using the same bases, which from one company, really, because for a lot of those things, you can't get those same bases in this country. But it's changing, and soon we'll be able to get British wool spun the way that I need it spun for my weaving. I can't get it spun like that in this country just yet, but it's that close. It's that close, and then it'll be completely British.
How wonderful!
So that'll be wonderful.
Yeah, because this is a whole different other side to the yarn industry that I'm sure the vast majority, without casting aspersions, of knitters and crocheters will go to a yarn shop and buy some yarn that's been produced on a large scale in a factory somewhere, potentially in Great Britain, but also quite possibly imported as well. But there's a whole other section of the industry, almost like a cottage industry, I guess, isn't there, that's bringing back the traditional way of doing things and really bringing it home so it's completely UK. And I have to ask, does that mean it is more environmentally friendly then? Obviously,
Well,
it doesn't have the same carbon footprint, but I guess...
Yeah, absolutely. And there are knitters who are really, really well up on this. So places like John Arbon, you'll have heard of John Arbon, that's so traceable. Laxton's, there was something, and I have to say, I listened to a podcast this morning, and it's an American podcast, and they mentioned something about Laxton's, who produced this yarn, which is it called Wool Traceable, or where there's a QR code and you can trace exactly which farm it's come from.
Wow.
There's Kate at Northern Yarn, who's up at Lancaster. She goes to local farms, doesn't she, and get her Methra wool. So I think that there's a lot of knitters who are really, really clued up, and they buy breed specific, and they buy to support these places like John Arbon, and because it's really, really important to them. That they will knit that thing, they will buy it from it, they know the breed, they know the qualities of that breed, they'll knit the garment, and then they'll know that if that garment, when the time is done, it's gonna rot away. Wow. and not harm the environment.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so important, isn't it, really, to keep these traditions alive and to also keep things local, and also not only for the environment but also for the farmers themselves. Mm-hmm. Because where will they be if they didn't have somebody to pass their products on to? Oh wow. Yeah. So it sounds like it's a very positive time in the yarn industry as far as that's concerned, because there's so much promise from what you're telling me.
I think so. I think that I'm always excited about it, but I think yes, I think it is. I think it is a really exciting time, because I think that you never stop learning, do you? You never stop learning, and so because there are all these new mills and things like that, there's so much more to discover that wasn't available before. It wasn't available when I first started spinning, but all these things now are in the pipeline, and so. Yeah, it's super exciting, and I think in the northwest as well, in the northwest of England, we're very lucky because we've got access to an awful lot of exciting things that are going on, which is lovely too.
Absolutely, no, there's such potential, isn't there, for exploration and expanding all our skills and the products that we use too. Yeah. Oh, so what would you say now, taking it back to a very personal kind of situation, what would you say your craft gives you personally, aside from an income?
For me, I think spinning in particular, learning to spin for some people can be a little bit of a challenge than it was for me, because there's a lot of coordination involved. But once you can spin, it is the most calming, meditative practice, I think. And if I'm ever stressed about anything, or I can come in and spin. I don't need to spin for anything in particular, but I sit down and I spin. And I suppose it's that same thing that you hear about with knitting and crochet. It's a repetitive action, isn't it? And so the repetitive action of drafting like this, and I can feel my body calm down. Feel everything just chill and get lost in that for an hour or so, and so it gives me a chance, a bit of peace, really, and it's very, very special. So I don't feel I particularly have to produce anything, but just in doing that is a little bit of an escape, and I think that's really important for me personally.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. I can totally identify, not from the spinning point of view, but just that repetitive action and being able to just either zone out of what you're doing or completely focus in what you're doing just clears your mind from all the other things that are crowding into your mind at the time, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that for us who are people who have those crafts, we do wonder what people would do who don't have that, don't we? Because it's just such a wonderful thing, isn't it?
It truly is. It truly is. Yes, I think a good deal more wine would be consumed in our household if I didn't have that.
Us too.
It sounds like you've got an exciting future to look forward to, and it's just, yeah, it sounds really exciting, and you're clearly touching so many different people's lives and bringing them over to this really calming hobby, which is doing so much good.
Well, everybody is welcome to come to the Woolers. You know, that's an open invitation, and so, you know, if people are interested, just to pop in, even if they're curious, it'd be really nice to meet them.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'll put the details for that then in the links to the show note and links to your website so people can find you and find out more about what you're doing. And it's been really lovely to speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your world with us.
All right, thank you. It's been lovely.
My thanks again to Cathy for taking the time to speak to me for Making Stitches podcast. If you'd like to find out more about Cathy and her work at Lazy Kate Textiles, you can find the link to Cathy's website in the show notes for this episode. That's all for this time. I do hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to support my Making Stitches adventure, you can find links to my online shop and Ko-fi page in the show notes too. And thank you so much for listening. It's been great to have your company. I'll be back again in 2 weeks' time with another creative chat for you to enjoy. Until then though, stay safe and enjoy your crafting.